Strange, isn't it? Someone can wake up every day, brush their teeth, make their morning coffee, read the news, and never realize something inside them is quietly slipping out of rhythm. It doesn't happen all at once. It's slower than that. More subtle. Like a clock in the living room, just 1 second off. You don't notice it at first, but weeks go by, and one day you're late for everything. And you wonder when it all began. That's what stroke is like. Sometimes not the loud, dramatic collapse people picture, but a whisper, a strange heaviness in your arm that comes and goes, word that disappears mid-sentence, a dizziness when you stand that you blame on the heat, or maybe age. You brush it off, you keep moving. After all, life doesn't wait, but the body, it remembers. It stores every missed signal, every ignored alarm, every "I'm fine" we say just to get through the day. I've seen people live like that for years, rushing through the noise, juggling responsibilities, carrying everyone else's weight but their own, until one morning, the smallest thing, a yawn, a turn of the neck, a sip of tea, tips the scale, and everything stops. But here's the part they never tell you. For many people, stroke doesn't arrive unannounced. It leaves clues. Quiet ones. Sometimes, weeks before. Not obvious, just strange enough to notice. If you're listening, you wake up feeling a little more tired than usual. You try to write something, but your fingers don't move quite right. You find yourself forgetting a name you've said 1,000 times. Nothing that makes you panic. Just enough to wonder, was that normal? And then you keep going. That's how it begins. Not with pain, but with silence, like a soft wind before the storm clouds roll in. But no one talks about that. No one teaches you how to listen for the quiet signs, because we're all taught to be strong, to ignore, to push through. Especially you, the caretaker, the provider, the one people lean on. But what if being strong meant something else? What if it meant noticing? What if it meant pausing, just long enough to hear what your body has been trying to say? I remember an old patient of mine. He used to laugh off his dizzy spells, called them senior moments. Said it only happened when he skipped breakfast or didn't sleep right. But over time, those moments started happening even on full stomachs and quiet nights. Still, he waited. Until the day he couldn't move the left side of his face. And by then, the moment to act had passed. He survived, but not all of him came back. He told me once, "I wish someone had told me what to look for. I would have listened. So here I am, telling you. Not to scare you, not to make you paranoid, but to give you something most people never get until it's too late. A chance to pay attention, because your body speaks. And sometimes, the warnings come long before the storm. You just have to be still enough to hear them. You ever stand up from bed and feel like the floor moved? Not in a dramatic way. Just off. Like gravity tugged a little too hard to the left, or like the air thinned out for a second, and you had to blink your way back into the room. Pause. Wait for it to pass. And it does. So you call it fatigue. Or maybe age. Or maybe it was just that second cup of coffee on an empty stomach. So you go on with your day. But inside, something shifts. Something tiny. Something your body noticed, even if you didn't. These moments where balance falters, they don't always mean stroke. But sometimes, they're the first sign. A soft warning that blood isn't flowing quite right. That something deep in the system, a vessel, a pressure point, a clot forming, is disrupting the brain's quiet rhythm. And the brain doesn't scream, it whispers. Through small stumbles, through slight hesitations, through that faint, spinning feeling when you turn your head too quickly, or look up at the ceiling and feel, just for a second, like you're floating. There's a story I still carry, a woman in her late 50s. She ran a bookstore, spent her days climbing stepladders, sorting old poetry collections, wrapping gifts for strangers like they were friends. One afternoon, she stood on the second step, reached up, and felt the whole room sway. She caught herself, laughed it off, said it was nothing. But the next week, it happened again, this time on flat ground. Her vision blurred, just for a breath. And then everything cleared. Still, she didn't tell anyone. Because, in her words, I'm just tired. Everyone's tired. 2 weeks later, she collapsed by the register. She woke up in a hospital bed. Her right leg wouldn't move. Her speech was slow, uneven, not gone, but not quite hers anymore. And in that quiet room, she looked at me and whispered, "It wasn't sudden, was it?" No, it wasn't. It rarely is. Stroke doesn't always come like a thief in the night. Sometimes it knocks softly. Days, even weeks before. Not through pain, but through disorientation, a lost sense of balance, a feeling like the ground no longer trusts your feet. But we live in a world that tells us to keep going, that dizziness is minor, that strength means pushing through, and so we ignore the signs. We blame the weather, the stress, the long hours, but the body doesn't lie when it shifts, even a little. It's worth listening. So, if you've had moments, even small ones, where your balance falters for no clear reason, where standing still feels like walking on water, where your steps feel slightly misaligned from your thoughts, don't rush past them. Don't laugh them away. Be still. Be honest. Ask yourself, when did this begin? Because sometimes the answer has been waiting weeks for you to ask. Sometimes it's not pain that warns you. It's something quieter. You're brushing your teeth, and your left hand feels slower, heavier, as if someone added a small weight to your wrist while you weren't looking, or you reach for the kettle, and your grip misses, just slightly. You tell yourself you were distracted. It fades after a minute, and so you let it go, but your body doesn't, because what you felt wasn't tiredness. It was misfiring. A part of your brain, however small, struggling to connect with a part of your body it used to control without question. And then, just like that, it returns to normal. As if nothing happened. That's the part that makes it dangerous. When a stroke leaves a permanent mark, people notice. But when the warning comes and goes, we forget it even happened. I once sat beside a man who worked with his hands all his life. Woodworker, meticulous, the kind who could sand down an edge by touch alone. One morning, he told me he dropped a chisel, not because it slipped. Because, for a moment, he couldn't feel his thumb. He thought it was just age, maybe a pinched nerve. It lasted 2 minutes, and then it was gone. A week later, he was carving when his entire arm gave out, mid-stroke of the blade. By the time he arrived at the hospital, he couldn't lift it at all. He looked at me, eyes wide, and said, "I thought I imagined it, that first time. I didn't think it meant anything." That's the thing with the body, it speaks in fragments, but when you put the pieces together, the story is already there. If you've ever felt a part of you go numb, not all at once, not dramatically, but just enough to notice. If your leg dragged slightly behind you for a few steps, if your fingers forgot how to button a shirt, and then it passed, and you told no one, Don't carry that silence alone. You see, stroke is not always sudden. Sometimes it rehearses. It sends tiny rehearsals into your life. 5 seconds here, 1 minute there. Moments where the left doesn't quite match the right. Moments where the body hesitates. And you convince yourself it didn't. But you felt it. You know when something isn't quite right. And I'll tell you this, gently, as someone who's seen what happens when we wait too long. The earlier you listen, the softer the landing. Might not need medicine. Not yet. You might not need intervention, but you need awareness. You need to stop brushing it off like dust. You need to pay attention to your own limbs, as if they were someone you love, because if it were your child, your parent, your partner, who said, "My hand felt weird earlier, but it's okay now," you'd say, "Let's go check." Why don't we do that for ourselves? The body's warning signs aren't there to scare us. They're there to give us time. So if your arm felt heavy last week, if your smile felt crooked in the mirror this morning, if your leg didn't follow your mind for a few seconds, don't wait for it to happen again. Don't wait for it to get louder. Hear it now, while it's still whispering. You open your mouth, and nothing comes out. Not silence, exactly, but a pause. A strange, awkward pause where your mind knows the word, but your tongue forgets how to say it. You shake your head. Try again. This time, the word arrives, but it's crooked somehow, slightly slurred, or just off. So you laugh it off. You know what I mean? I haven't had my coffee yet. I'm just tired. And maybe you are. Maybe it was just stress, or distraction, or a bad night's sleep, but maybe it was something deeper. You see, language lives in the brain, and when blood doesn't move right through certain corners, the ones responsible for speech, memory, clarity, the first things to fade, aren't always visible. They're audible. Or nearly. Like forgetting the word for toothbrush, or calling your nephew by your brother's name, even though you've never confused them before, or starting a sentence, and realizing halfway through that the words have run ahead of you, and you don't know where they went. I once had a patient, a school teacher. Sharp as a tack, read 2 books a week, could quote Emily Dickinson from memory. She came to me after a parent-teacher meeting, said she'd called a child by the wrong name 3 times. Sighed she stumbled over the word education. Not once, but twice. She looked at me with eyes full of doubt and said, "Do you think I'm just overwhelmed?" Maybe, but she listened to the part of her that said, "This isn't like me." So we ran a few tests, and what we found was a narrowing artery near the speech center of her brain. No stroke yet, but close, closer than she thought. She took action, changed her pace, started medication, told the people in her life what was happening, even though it scared her. And because she did, she's still reading poetry. Still teaching, still herself. But not everyone hears the warning in time. Because language errors don't always look like danger. They look like clumsiness, like forgetfulness, like being distracted, and so we hide it. We laugh. We move on, but the brain remembers, and when it starts misfiring the wires of speech, it's not playing games. It's asking for help. Quietly. If lately you've found yourself pausing mid-sentence, searching for words that used to come naturally. If your speech has felt slightly tangled, not broken, just unfamiliar, don't ignore that voice inside you that says, "This isn't me." You know yourself. You know how your thoughts normally flow. So when something stutters, when the rhythm breaks, when the sentence feels borrowed, take a moment, not to panic, but to notice, because when the brain begins to whisper through your voice, you still have time to listen. We've all had headaches from long nights, from bright lights, from holding in too much for too long. Most of the time, they pass. A bit of water, a bit of rest, and they go. But sometimes, a headache arrives differently, not louder, but stranger. It settles behind one eye, or curls around the back of your head like a slow, invisible hand, or pulses in short, sharp beats like a second heart, pounding where it shouldn't be. You pause, rub your temple, blame the screen, or the coffee, or the stress. And maybe you're right. But maybe this headache isn't yours. You see, the brain has no pain sensors of its own. When you feel a headache, you're feeling pressure on the things around the brain, nerves, vessels, tissues. So when the blood flow changes, when a vessel tightens, swells, or leaks just enough, your body doesn't scream. It whispers, through discomfort, through heaviness, through a headache that doesn't behave like the others. There was a man I once treated, 62 years old. Never liked hospitals. He told me he'd had a weird headache. For 2 days, he'd taken paracetamol. It helped, then it didn't. He said it wasn't the pain that brought him in. It was how wrong it felt. It doesn't feel like mine, he said. It's quiet, but it's deep. Like something is pressing from inside. Turns out, he was right. A tiny clot had begun to form near a critical artery. No full blockage, not yet, but enough to stir pressure where there shouldn't be any. We caught it early. He went home a week later, lighter. Not just in the body, but in the mind, because what he felt wasn't just pain. It was his body speaking. And this time, he listened. So ask yourself, when was the last time you had a headache? And paused long enough to wonder why. Not what to take for it, but what it might be saying. Was it sudden? Did it come with blurred vision, or stiffness in your neck, or a wave of nausea for no reason? Did it feel unfamiliar? Not just painful, but foreign? That's the one to pay attention to. That's the one worth sitting with. Not in fear. In awareness. We're taught to push through pain, to dull it, numb it, distract from it. But pain, at its core, is a messenger, and some messengers don't knock twice. So if a headache comes again, and something in you says, this doesn't feel like mine, pause. Close your eyes. Feel where it lives. Listen for what else is out of rhythm. Because sometimes what saves us isn't stronger medicine. It's softer attention. There's tired. And then there's something else. A kind of tiredness that sleep doesn't fix, that creeps in before the day even starts, that sits behind your eyes like fog, that makes even simple things, walking to the kitchen, tying your shoes, feel like you're moving through water. You tell yourself it's just stress. Too many things on your plate. Too much on your mind. And maybe that's true, but sometimes sometimes this tiredness isn't about what you do. It's about what your body is trying to keep up with. You see, your brain runs on oxygen, delivered through tiny highways of blood, minute by minute, second by second. When those highways narrow, even slightly, less oxygen gets through. Not enough to shut things down, just enough to slow them. You don't feel pain. You feel heavy. Unmotivated, not because you're lazy, but because your brain is running on low fuel. You get through the day, but barely. And each morning feels like a hill you've already climbed. The night before, I remember a woman, early 60s, still working, Still sharp. She came in not for pain, but for fatigue. Not the I didn't sleep kind, but the kind where folding laundry felt like climbing stairs. She said, I just feel wrong, like my body's here, but my energy isn't. Her heart was fine, her labs were fine, but her brain scan told another story. Tiny areas, barely visible, where blood flow had dropped over time, not a full stroke, but previews. Soft footprints of what might come next. We often wait for something dramatic before we act, but the body rarely starts with drama. It starts with whispers. Fatigue is one of them. Especially when it shows up without cause, when it lingers, even after rest, when it wraps around your day like a blanket you can't shake off. So if lately you felt this weight, if you wake up tired and go to bed the same, not from doing too much but from being too still, take a breath, not to panic, but to notice. This may not be stress. This may not be aging. This may be a signal, a soft one, but real. Most people push through, drink more coffee, blame the weather, tell themselves, I just need a break. But what if the body is asking you for one? Not from work. From danger, because sometimes the most dangerous thing about a stroke is not the moment it hits. It's the weeks before, when you felt off, but didn't know how to name it. So if that fog has settled over you lately, if you feel like you're wading through life instead of walking in it, pause. Ask gently, what if this isn't just tiredness? Because that question, that one question, might be the beginning of something that doesn't end in silence. You lie down, you close your eyes, but sleep doesn't come the way it used to. Not deeply, not quietly. You toss, turn, wake up in the middle of the night, not from noise, not from dreams, just awake. Sometimes your heart's beating little fast. Sometimes your head feels full or distant, like it's not quite in place. You sit up, drink water, blame the room, the temperature, the late dinner, but deep down, something feels different. Not wrong, just unfamiliar. And maybe you say nothing, because what's there to say? It's just sleep, after all. But maybe not. You see, stroke doesn't always show up while you're awake. Sometimes the signs begin at night. In the slowing of blood, the uneven pressure, the brief dips and rises that knock your brain just slightly off center, enough to wake you, but not enough to explain why. Sleep becomes shallow. Dreams feel strange. You wake up more tired than when you closed your eyes, and the nights begin to feel longer than the days. There was a man I knew, early 70s, quiet, kind, retired engineer. Came in not because of chest pain or numbness, but because his wife told him, you don't sleep like you used to. She noticed first. He used to sleep through storms. Now he woke at 3 a.m., staring at the ceiling. Said his head felt like a balloon, not aching, just distant. And then one morning, his hand wouldn't grip the spoon. That's when he came in. We scanned his brain. Small vessels, narrowed. Blood flow disrupted, the kind of damage that builds quietly, but we caught it. He changed course, and sleep came back. So did the mornings. Most people don't think of insomnia as a warning, but when sleep changes suddenly, when your nights feel uneasy for no clear reason, don't just blame age. Blame deserves nothing here. What matters is curiosity. Gentle, honest curiosity. If lately your sleep has become unfamiliar, if you wake often, or wake with a pounding heart, or feel like your body slept, but your brain didn't. Pause. Listen. You are not broken. You are being warned softly, kindly, while there's still time. And now, maybe, you're starting to connect the dots. The dizziness, the heaviness, the words that falter, the headaches, the tiredness, the strange sleep, none loud, none obvious, but together. They begin to paint something real. Health doesn't disappear in an instant. It fades, quietly, through tiny cracks we ignore, until they become floods. But here's the grace in all of this. You're not too late. If you're hearing this now, if something in your chest feels seen, that's not fear, that's awareness. And awareness is how everything begins to change. Not because someone told you to, not because of fear, but because something deep inside you knows you still have time. So, now you know, not everything, no, but enough. Enough to stop brushing it off. Enough to feel that soft pull inside that says, I've been missing something. That's not fear speaking. That's something wiser, something quieter. That's you finally turning toward yourself. Most people wait for the sirens, the collapse, the moment everything breaks. But health rarely ends that way. It dissolves, bit by bit, through the little choices, the little denials, the little signs we told ourselves didn't matter, until one day we can't rewind. But you're here, you're listening. You felt the weight in your arm. You've stumbled not just on your feet, but on your words. You've woken from a night that didn't feel like rest, and instead of pushing it away, you stayed with it. That's not weakness. That's the beginning of something real. I'm not here to tell you what to do. I'm not here to give you a plan, or a product, or a guarantee. I'm just here to say, the body always speaks. And when you finally start listening, life changes, not suddenly, not dramatically, but gently. A walk instead of a rush. A breath before the next appointment. A checkup you no longer postpone. A hand on your own chest, not in fear, but in care. You start showing up for yourself. One of the hardest truths I've ever had to say to someone is, if we had caught it earlier. And one of the most beautiful moments I've ever witnessed is when someone comes back a year later, smiling quietly, saying, I did something different, and I'm still here. So let this be that moment, not of panic, not of pressure, but of presence. Not because someone scared you, not because someone told you to, but because you finally saw yourself, and you realized in the stillness between symptoms, in the space between everything you've ignored, you still have time.